whatever you would like to say, if you have something on your heart.
For the openBIM community that is following you, keep doing what you're doing because there is a change in the mentality of people. Like even the fact that we are seeing people actively seeking information, not just things that you scroll by and you see like people actively seeing information and actively seeing innovation, that's producing a change. And find a good mentor.
Hey friends, welcome back to BIMvoice. Today I have the pleasure to talk to Alexandru Patache from Splendid Development, a company from Romania which is using quite advanced BIM workflows. Hi Alexandru.
Petru, thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining. I know more people from your company, but I don't know you too well. So let's start with that. Tell us a few words about yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? And then we can dive deeper into other aspects.
I'm recently a father, so I can start with that before being an engineer.
Congratulations.
After that, I'm a civil engineer with a specialty for infrastructure, meaning roads, bridges, and railways. On the working part, I focus mostly on roadways, highways, and drainage networks. A little bit tangible on collaboration with different disciplines on tunnels and bridges, and passionate about BIM and technology, let's say, or all over the place in BIM and technology. Tech savvy.
But is your job description just a civil engineer, or do you have a specific role in Splendid?
I take the role of BIM coordinator in several projects, but I would say that's, let's say, a part of it. The main job would be an engineer, because I think you need an engineering background to understand the processes behind, or at least some technical background to actually say you can comprehend something about BIM. Or that's just my impression sometimes.
How long have you been in the industry?
In the industry, we're about 10 years, I would say now. Around 10 years of experience. I started working off at a local company, but didn't like the local market that much in the technical department for biddings and stuff. So I joined Arcadis, I think in 2014, and been with Arcadis for about 7 years, and afterwards 6 or 7, something like that. And afterwards moved to Splendid with 4 years now and going. And started from working simple projects in Arcadis, like, the simple stuff, because when you're junior engineer and design, from the basic stuff, and afterwards being a big company, you get the opportunity to touch point on small bits and pieces of big projects. And once you do that, let's say good, you can actually progress and do amazing stuff on big projects.
What can you tell us about this company? I just said briefly that you are using advanced BIM workflows. What is this company? Can you give me some details about it?
Okay, Splendid Development, it's a fresh company. We're the average age, I think it's around in the 30s, so young people enthusiastic about technology. We're a team of around 50 professionals, because we're not only engineers, we're also architects there, design artists, because we have a visualization department, and also people involved in the, let's say, technical department of the company. In terms of what we're doing there, we're working on design for projects all around Europe, mostly focused on the Nordic part, let's say in Belgium, Netherlands, but also France and Germany, I would like to say. And the services are vary from structural engineering to infrastructure design to design automation to visualization. And most recently, people are requesting gamification, let's say VR experience, like in game-like simulation inside a project. If you want to consult the public, you give them the actual experience and of viewing the project. So it's a whole range of things, and we're constantly looking for new solutions and new technologies to see what can actually be applied to a project and what actually can bring value to a project. Because something can be nice, can be very interesting, can be very pleasant to present, but it may not bring value, or it's not easy to use. So we kind of try to do a balance on that also. Like, if something is good and it's bringing value and it's interesting to the market, then we can push a bit forward. So a lot of development, because Splendid Development.
Can you dive deeper into this? Can you give me some examples of such value propositions, situations where some use cases of something specifically that you proposed or you have used on any project and your client saw value in that?
At the moment, there are some workflows that we are implementing in some projects that are mostly focused on asset management, because people think ahead and using BIM not only for design, construction, and cost, but also for some simulation and asset management. So basically, once infrastructure design is quite complex when you speak about BIM, that's why only now we have 4.3 on IFC. So it's only now, it's quite fresh. So it's very difficult to actually establish a link between an object or an object code and attach some properties to it, and to be able to validate and to verify that object is the same object through all the design process. I'll give you an example. You have a road, you have an intersection, you have two alignments merging, or three, or I don't know. Then you shift the intersection a few meters. The whole thing splits, and you don't know which is part of which, and the elements basically explode. So it's not like in a Revit model where you have a static object with the same ID, the same handle, and it's just changing geometry. You have a new set of properties. And we've tackled that through some internal development on Dynamo's Civil 3D API based, to attach some properties, IDs, to track back on objects, to be able to apply different property sets required by the client to be identified in their database.
Okay. Property set, would that mean that you are delivering anything in IFC?
Yes, the actual deliveries are also in the standard format, the proprietary format, DVG, Revit files, or stuff like that, but it's also required to have IFC because open data, and because the client should not be limited to one software use, and whatever it's going to be 10, 20 years from now, you should be able to look at the data. So it shouldn't be sealed.
Yeah, definitely. But is this something that you have any projects where this is like the main delivery, or is usually mostly like you are based on the client focuses on the data like as a whole, and then you get to deliver IFC also just as a secondary backup solution?
No. The data of the IFC files, it's in the scope of the project. So that's not just a backup. So the scope is what I'm speaking now. It's, I think, it's in the Oosterwolde project, which is the closing of the Ring of Antwerp, the northern part of the ring. And parts of the project that we're working, besides the plans, the bill of quantities, every classical, let's say the analog techniques, you have to deliver the digital asset, which is actually an IFC model with each and every object with a unique ID, a unique object code, and it has some properties specific to that object that can be identified by material, by the specification, by their use, and that is also exported into IFC. So therefore speaking, all the properties are aggregated in such a way, exports, let's say, from infrastructure and from the structural part and everything. If you put them all together in IFC, you can filter by the same property sets. We're trying not to have, let's say, because nothing is perfect, not to have any clashes in between the data, because in the structures we always have clashes. That's something that happens, but in the data, at least, keep it clear.
Makes sense. Are we talking about IFC 2x3 or did you explore IFC 4?
2x3.
For now, 2x3.
2x3. Yeah, we are exploring IFC for X3, but it's young. We're doing some testing. We are trying to find uses of them that can be applied to our project.
Yeah, there are not yet tools across the whole spectrum of tools that you need actually to support, although there are some tools that are supporting, but it's still early because, yeah, the certification process, I don't think it's in place yet, and it's just like a testing environment yet for the existing tools. Even Revit has this, but it's still like a test of it.
Blender BIM has it. Blender BIM actually opens.
Welcome to my world. Are you using Blender BIM? That's so nice.
No, I tested it because I tested, I think, 4 or 5 different readers to open an IFC 4x3. And Blender BIM was the one that actually saw the objects. We exported the Civil 3D file, so all the corridors or the data, and it could actually open the corridor. You could select all the elements, like you can see the properties. Because, well, the file is there. If you open it with a notepad, you can see the data, but you want to see also the objects.
That's true, because Blender BIM and IFC OpenShell has been updated to 4.3, but is not, I don't think it's fully compliant yet. But to some degree it works, yes. Did you give it a try to Quadri also? Because I heard that Quadri works, or you don't have this tool in your palette.
No, we don't have that tool. Didn't try. We tried some openBIM, some XBIM viewer. Navisworks, of course, doesn't have it. Navisworks because
No, it's a new protocol, and it was easier for IFC OpenShell to do that since it's already emulating the IFC schema. So, but that's cool to hear. I did not try it myself yet. I don't know, maybe next year sometimes, because I guess it is to be expected for IFC 4.3 to become an ISO standard next year. It's still not. It's just published by Building Smart. It's not just rumors. It will become eventually, but you don't know how long it will take until it will become. And I don't think many software providers will use too much time on it before that will happen. So I might be wrong, but it's just assumption.
You're very IFC savvy, so maybe you have some answers. I don't know.
It's too much to say savvy because there is so much more I need to learn myself about IFC, but I'm a bit more exposed to the noise around IFC on social media and so on. And
because of Building Smart and all the things that you're part of?
I don't know what you know that I am part of Building Smart. I'm a paying member of Building Smart in Romania.
You're an active member. You're an active member.
Yeah, but everything I do has actually no affiliation. Everything you see posting regarding openBIM has no affiliation with Building Smart. Everything I do on my own. If you check what I post on LinkedIn, I posted a lot lately on about different stuff. It has no affiliation, just that I'm using, of course, the official website of the schema. But I don't have any affiliation. I have good dialogue with many people from Building Smart because I believe with all my heart and on these open standards, and that's the only way we can go forward. But that stops there. Just that we have the common goal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what I will find interesting about 4x3 is that the classification, if the exporters will be made by the software providers in such a way that you can actually use them, then the classification that they use in some ways could make obsolete some workflows. Could. So everything is like if, could, if. So there's a lot of if beforehand. So probably the development will take years, but it looks good on the surface. And if you check 2-3 videos on LinkedIn, you're maybe gonna go wild, like, yeah, this is the next big thing. Well, maybe not.
Yeah, I think to some degree that it will happen, but at the end of the day, depends on how much the final user and the client will dare to use it, you know? Okay, let's say that IFC 4.3 is becoming official, ISO standard, the tools are supporting it, and you'll still keep exporting to IFC 2x3. Then nothing will change, right? At the end of the day, you are the who decides this, and this only if the client does not require that specific format. Because if you get a requirement, I want deliveries in 4.3, then you have no choice, of course.
Usually the client moves slower than you move, so probably not.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to say that in Norway, we have some clients that are specifying they want deliveries in IFC 4. So I am sure that when it will become an official standard, that will be the case. They will update to IFC 4.3. So yeah, but it's something else outside, I understand. Here is a big interest for openBIM, and I'm not bragging about, I'm just happy for that happening. It's good to see some official entities interested.
It's nice because you need some push, you need also some pull. And while the industry, like the professionals are pushing, the state has to come and do a pull sometime to actually make it happen.
Yeah, because not always, like if you're comfortable exporting to IFC 2x3, and if nobody tells you that I want IFC 4, then you will just keep doing that because you are comfortable doing that, right? And it's not like it's rocket science to upgrade to IFC 4, but you will need few days to set yourself into what is the difference, how I can do that, how I can achieve that, right? So because even IFC 4 is better and provides you with a better export and with better structured data and so on, more details, you will not do it, right? If the client won't require it for you. Only maybe someone who's more interested, more keen to do that, they see me talking like a crazy people on LinkedIn and on my YouTube channel about this, so they will have a look at it. But usually is not this interest, right? So it is what it is, but at the same time, I'm happy for what is happening. And you said that IFC 4.3 is going to change if you are using it accordingly and so on. IFC 5 is looking really, really good, but we are few.
You're still at the mercy of the software provider. Like if the vendor doesn't put a proper IFC exporter, or if you have to make your IFC I'm speaking mostly for infrastructure, because the IFC exporter for infrastructure is usually very, very rudimentary. Like at the moment in our current workflow, we use 2x3 and every element that we export is building proxy. So you don't have any category for nothing.
But isn't possible to change those settings in any way? Like, are we talking about Civil 3D or Revit now?
And Civil 3D.
Okay, because in Revit, you can customize.
In Revit, you can customize it. You have that file. You can change where different families go depending on how you use them. So that's in Revit. In Civil 3D, every element until now goes into building proxy. It's a 3D solid, so everything goes into building proxy.
That sounds weird.
It's very weird, but that's why we have our own property sets that have classification, function of the material, the object code, and stuff like that. So basically, if we're putting our property sets that do the classification, then IFC port 4.3 doesn't help me that much, because I already have my workflow that does exactly what IFC 4.3 does. Like I know where my barriers are, where my gutter are, where's my foundation, where's my, like, based on my codes. If the exporter will do that.
Yeah, but how are you injecting this information, these presets in this without changing the parameters?
How Civil 3D works is, I don't know if you're familiar. So basically you have your row design, you need an alignment, a vertical profile. Then again, you need a typical profile, which is an assembly in Civil 3D, which you attach multiple sub-assemblies to it. A sub-assembly is a part of the road, like a lane, a curb, a gutter, a sidewalk, whatever. We have those sub-assemblies custom made that take in some parameters that are made by us. And the parameters are, elementary speaking, some strings with some codes attached to them. Afterwards, when you finish your design, those solids from the sub-assemblies are extracted and have embedded that particular code that you pushed in the typical profile to begin with. Based on those codes and some of the intrinsic parameters that come out from Civil 3D, you can do some post-processing in the background, attach a property set to the object and export it to IFC. So IFC is used as a vehicle to push the data as open source. That's why we use it.
Yeah, but when you go and you click on export to IFC, then you cannot do much there. But I'm thinking about something, in Revit, there is this free GitHub plugin, or I don't think it's a plugin, because it's update for Revit, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an add-on or something, but you get, like, you can do much more by using that than using what you have inbuilt in the Revit menu, right? Wouldn't it be possible to do the same for Civil 3D? Maybe that program, that file, or that add-on can be tailored for Civil 3D?
It's also the question if the work is worth the effort, because you have to write a new exporter from scratch based on the IFC schema. I think there's a saying in one of the IFC books, like if you want to have an exporter, IFC is not only like Autodesk made for Civil 3D, push button for IFC export, and everything is put there. It's not something custom made like in Revit where you can assign different categories and you have some flexibility to leverage the power of IFC. And Civil is everything thrown in the box, unless you have a software provider that actually gives you that. And in 4.3 IC, you have a JSON file that you can use to apply certain settings to put different objects in different categories for classification IFC, which is an improvement. In 2x3, you don't have that. So you're limited also by the power of the software at certain points. And what we did, it's a workaround.
Yeah, sure. Do you see like our industry going further without IFC? Like, do you see, could we live, or are the disadvantages too big?
That's a difficult question asking. If you take into account the whole industry, IFC is a must. If you take into account the whole, if you're trying to look just in your particular domain, then you can easily say, well, I don't need this because I can exchange proprietary software format with another colleague and that's it. But if you're thinking of big databases and if you're thinking of asset management, because it's never a construction doesn't end when you close the site, it's when you demolish the construction. That's where it ends. So if you're thinking of managing an asset through the whole life cycle and to actually do that in a smart way without losing money, then you need IFC. Or the next big thing that will come, I don't know, an open source format. You need an open source format and you need something that you can edit that open source format and to keep it up to date, because it's not a dead model. It should be a live model.
Yeah, open standard, because an open standard usually it's maintained by an entity like Building Smart International is.
I think it's a must in the industry. Like, I don't see how we can go on. Like, technology is shifting. Like, Moore's law is still applicable. There's new technologies that are coming every year, and the construction industry is not to say that it's moving slow, but it's kind of analog to what it's happening in the real world. Like, we're still using a lot of old technologies, old workflows, and it's very, very difficult to shift mentalities. Fortunately, a lot of good things have been done. Like, I started work, I think, in 2014. BIM was just something you had to push. Like, you had to push that, and now it's becoming there's no discussion about it in the project that we're working now. Like, BIM is something that's a must.
That's good to hear. Interesting. Are you modeling your structures, your tunnels, your roads and everything manually, or are you doing something more?
I'm focused on the road design, but I work on a lot of projects in shared collaboration with my colleagues. So we try to automate as much as possible. Avoid, if you're doing something 10 times a day or 20 times a day, then you can automate that. Either it's a Dynamo script or some Python, or you need a C#. We have great colleagues that are very keen to scripting. So we are using internally a lot of scripts to automate the collaboration between Civil 3D and Revit, because there's a lot of data loss. Civil 3D works in a linear way and Revit is more object-oriented. And when you try to make Revit to work like Civil, you get some problems because alignments have spirals and curves, and Revit doesn't like that much to have a spiral in 3 direction on a bridge. Like, if you have a vertical slope and a horizontal slope and you have a transition, then you get something messy on a bridge. But we are using some scripts to actually read the Civil 3D file, the alignment files, generate structures in Revit that follow the coiler. So as much as possible, there's the other law. There's so much that you can automate. Some things, if you are trying to make a script and it's kind of tailor-made for this project, then it's best to do it manually. Like, some things are not supposed to be automated.
If you cannot reuse it, might not worth to invest the time.
I have a joke in turn. Like, a lot of things that you see on LinkedIn, those are one-time uses.
Okay, that's interesting.
Imagine a lot of scripts that people use, like, they're not generally made, because if they were to be generally made, like, we're using Dynamo for prototyping. If I want to do something in Civil 3D, because Revit is a bit more difficult to customize in terms of C#. But if I want to do something in Civil 3D, I'm going to use Dynamo, create a script, see if it works, test it a few times. And then I have a colleague that's actually savvy in coding, and he'll do a C# script, pack it well, put a DLL file, and I'm going to use that. Because why bother using Dynamo with Python on a C# API rather than using the C# API?
What would you say to somebody who is still not so open or not using BIM and openBIM, open standards on their projects? Do you have a message, or forget about this, like a general message, whatever you would like to say, if you have something on your heart, for the openBIM community that is following me?
For the openBIM community that is following you, keep doing what you're doing, because there is a change in the mentality of people. Like, even the fact that we are seeing people actively seeking information, not just things that you scroll by and you see, like, people actively seeing information and actively seeing innovation, that's producing a change. And find a good mentor that will push you a bit more than you need, because, like, it's interesting to be all over the place. I'm interested in this and that, but you need somebody to push you towards a direction, and then you can follow something, at least to be good at something, because it's a lot there. It's like, I am experienced in programming. Well, what kind of programming? What are you doing? It's something like that. I know BIM. what do you know about BIM? It's very generic. So you need to be particularly good in a field to actually, and open standards, well, because you want to know what the architect does, because you want to know what the landscape architect does, because you want to know what the civil guy does, what the structural guy does. Then you want to know why do you do some things, because if you don't foresee what's going to happen in asset management, like you don't know, you don't understand what you're doing a boring job today. That's going to be useful in asset management. You have to add all the data to the barrier, because in case of a crash, people don't go on the site to look at what type of barrier was it and how long is it. Go to the database, see what the type of barrier, have it delivered in 2 days, and put the highway back on track. So like you have to see those to understand those, and afterwards you're not going to ask questions. You know why you need openBIM.
Yeah, makes sense. How people could reach out to you and to your company?
You can find us at splendiddevelopment.ro, I think. And always, if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Alex Patache, or alex.patache@gmail.com. I'm always open to speak with people that are interested in BIM and technology. Whatever, like it's a small community of professionals around the world, and I had the opportunity to actually work when I was working at Arcadis, I had the opportunity to get in touch with people that were pioneers. And if you get in touch with people that are pioneers, like they were speaking about BIM 20 years ago. I was speaking about some forward-seeing people that I've met in Arcadis that pushed me to actually be interested in what's happening. And those people are pushing the industry right now also. And it's also nice to be a part of the movement. We're seeing a shift in the construction industry. We have the opportunity to be part of that change from, I would like to say, analog to digital. It's actually nice to be part of that movement.
Yeah, and not only be part, but we can also we can influence this. We can have a contribution to this, right?
It's better to lead than to follow sometimes.
Yeah.
It's also good to follow. You don't have the responsibility of leading.
And not everyone has the time or wants, or if both roles have their importance.
Yes, that's always the case. You need the thinkers, you need the drivers.
Yes. Well, Alex, thank you very much for joining me and for the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
We'll stay in touch.
Stay in touch. Thank you, Petru.